So I'm going to be a bit of the troublemaker today, and Car's going to come up and fix things. So I'm going to break some stuff, and then Car's going to bring the good news. We're going to talk a little bit about workplace rituals and workplace practices. We've talked a bit about Sunday morning, right? And how Sunday morning can be a place where you talk with God and you connect with God. And you are shaped and formed in all kinds of beautiful ways on a Sunday morning for your life out in the world. And we're going to talk about what happens to you on Monday, right? You can be shaped and formed in beautiful ways on Monday and in some pretty crummy ways on Monday. When I was in high school, I was a jock and I played basketball. That was about 50 pounds ago, but I used to play sports. And as you will recall from your memories of jocks in high school, where we can be kind of self-centered people who are kind of proud of themselves in a variety of ways that they have not earned. And so I was pretty full of myself. And yet, my first job was as a dishwasher and a busboy in a trucker diner. And the waitresses bossed me around all the time. And they didn't care how many rebounds I had that weekend at all. And being a dishwasher and a busboy and serving the waitresses and serving the people, people weren't asking me how my day was going, right? They didn't see me. They didn't applaud. That ritual was actually really good for me at that point in my life. I needed to be humbled. And that was a workplace where I learned how to serve. And as a high school kid, that was really good for me, right? In very subtle ways. No one gave me a lecture about servant leadership at the diner, right? No one told me, here's why it's really important to be humble. There were just all kinds of little practices and reminders that I was not the center of the universe. And slowly over time, I learned to develop a servant heart. Those rituals were really good. Later on, I became an academic. And there were all kinds of little rituals and practices within the world of the academy that could actually shape me in some pretty bad ways, of actually training me to think only about myself and my research, and how to put myself forward in my reading and my writing, and wanting to be competitive and the best in my class, and all kinds of things that would sort of reinforce my selfishness. Right? All kinds of subtle ways you're trained as an academic to put yourself first. And what I wanted to get us to think about here, is actually think about the ways that your heart is being shaped in the workplace, in some beautiful ways and some really hard ways. And we're going to do a little bit of a self-evaluation here, okay? Let's think just a little bit about how a workplace trains your heart, how you are being shaped and formed every single day in wonderful and hard ways. First of all, incentives, right? Certain kinds of behaviors in your workplace are incentivized, right? You are rewarded. There's a series of carrots and a series of sticks, right? And certain kinds of personalities flourish. And you're blessed and recognized for certain kinds of behaviors and not others. Second, a workplace often has a mission or a goal. Much like a church, right? We seek out the kingdom of God. A company might seek shareholder value, right? Or market share, or whatever it is. But every company or workplace has a mission, and it tries to orient your heart towards that mission. It could be a wonderful mission, it could be a bad mission, but make no mistake about it, your managers are trying to shape you towards that mission. Stories are told, great stories about successful salespeople, stories about expansion and growth. And these stories are meant, once again, to shape and form your heart about what a good worker is and what a bad worker is. All kinds of rituals throughout the day. Think about performance reviews and how they work. Right? How does a performance review work on your heart? The anticipation of it, the experience of it in the aftermath, how you process that. Think even about the space in which you work. How does your desk compare to those who are above you or below you? The lighting, the size, which office you get. It reminds you who you are and what role you have. Sometimes in wonderful ways, sometimes in really dehumanizing ways. The actual structure of a workspace shapes us and our hearts. Now think about time. Think about the way your year is structured. Maybe it's around a quarterly system. Maybe it's an end of the week or an hourly, but think about how the time itself at work shapes your heart and what it does to you, how it trains and forms you. Then finally, think about the saints in your industry or the heroes, the sort of model citizens and the people who get awards. What kinds of character is rewarded, is recognized? How does that match up with the saints of the church? Our hearts are being shaped and formed, not just on Sunday morning, but on Monday morning as well. So now I want you to think about the state of your workplace heart. Is it rushed? Is it a sped up heart? Is it hard to slow your heart down? Is it a grasping heart? Grasping for the next thing, yearning, reaching. Is it a hurt heart? Has it been traumatized by some continued injustice or a microaggression that just keeps on happening? Perhaps it's a very proud heart. Maybe you own the company and everyone comes to you for answers and everyone looks to you and serves you and seeks out and tries to coddle you, right? And just reinforces all the time that you are the master of that domain. And so the workplace itself just keeps feeding your ego, right? So as you enter in, it just keeps puffing you up more and more. Maybe it's a numb heart that over time you've just deadened your heart. These liturgies have just broken you, right? And you just kind of switch off. A selfish heart, like maybe the rituals have taught you that you have to look out for number one. Guarded. Perhaps you've shared your feelings or your dreams or your yearning, and that's gotten knocked down over and over and over and over again, and slowly you've learned to guard yourself. And then finally, a competitive heart. Think about your workplace heart and how that's being shaped, not through overt messages, but through slow and subtle repetition. Okay? Many of you have heard this story before. Two young fish are swimming through the water. They're enjoying their time, and they come across an older fish, and the older fish says, "Good morning, boys. How's the water?" And the two younger fish keep swimming, and they look at each other and they say, "What's water? What's water?" They didn't realize they were swimming in something. The exercise I'm trying to get you to do right now is actually to reflect on the water that you're swimming in and how it's shaping and forming you. And understand here that your heart is actually so much more powerful than your brain in these kinds of things. And here's what I mean by that. Here's just one example. Perhaps you have a very rushed and anxious workplace, and it speeds your heart up a lot, right? And you just learn to be anxious, and it's been trained in you over the years. Pound, 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 move, more, more, more. Now, if I give you a sermon on Sabbath and rest, and I tell you all the biblical reasons why you need to rest, and I fill your brain with all kinds of instructions about resting, what will happen Monday morning is you'll be right back into the rush, right? I can fill your brain with ideas about the importance of rest, but you've learned over years of practice to rush. So how we combat that is actually not through filling your head with ideas about rest, but actually training you to practice rest. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. And that relates to that next point, which is practice over will. So if I tell you to just try really hard to rest, first of all, you'll fail. Then you'll be hard on yourself, right? And then you'll just go back to your normal thing. But if you begin to practice rest in small ways, a little bit each day, just a piece, and we'll talk about this later, that over time creates new pathways in your brain, right? New patterns in your heart. And that's something more than the will. And finally is just to understand that you are responding to this, but potentially in some destructive ways. So once again, if you have a very rushed heart, one of the ways you can respond to that is just vegging out when you get home, right? You got your pajama pants on, you're doing Netflix, you're eating junk food, you're just kind of numbing a destructive workplace, right? You're not actually dealing with it, you're just kind of, you're trying to survive it. So we go on vacations to escape a lifestyle that is destructive, right? Rather than actually thinking, what might be some more productive patterns for dealing with this? So that's what we're really going to be digging into, but we can't dig into it until you understand how the workplace is shaping and forming you. We have to take that assessment. So you have to, number one, examine your workplace water. Examine your workplace water. How it structures time and space, how your behavior is being reinforced, the environment, the culture of it. Examine that water and examine your workplace heart, right? What kind of a heart is this producing? And you can be thankful for the good ways your workplace is training you. Maybe you've been blessed with an amazing boss who is training you in a variety of ways to be gracious and think of others and serve the team, but maybe not. But you need to examine your workplace heart. And then as we pivot here, we're really going to be thinking about how it is that you begin to swim upstream, little by little. Because friends, it's dead fish that go with the flow, right? It's dead fish that go with the flow. And you don't really understand the water until you start to swim against it. You don't really understand the water you're swimming in until you pivot and try to swim against it. And then you're going to feel the force of it. You're going to feel the press, the push. But you got to start by examining your workplace heart and examining your workplace water. And so I want to encourage you to reflect on that. If we had more time, I'm going to invite Kara to come up now. And Kara's going to be talking a little bit more about practicing the presence of God and maybe countering some of these activities. But this is really what we're going to be exploring here through the afternoon, is how you might begin to practice the presence of God. What are some practices to press against this flow? And think about that. But I wish I could give you 15 minutes to just map your workplace, right? To go through all those categories of time and space and heroes and story and mission. I mean, when you go home, try to create a map of what this water is and try to reflect on what's happening to your heart. And the great thing is that you're not alone in this, that Christ is with you, and the church has given us practices to begin to practice the presence of God at work. And I am so grateful that our sister Kara can help us think about all of that. Would you please welcome Kara back up?